We cannot see you.
Oh, yeah, no, okay, I think, yeah, Rizwan, good luck, looking bright and sharp, good.
Thank
hello.
স্যার
Thank you for
মাননীয় মন্ত্রী মহোদয় আসসালামু আলাইকুম
Okay.
Sir,
I'm at
absolutely.
my desk, I'm at my desk.
With the kind permission of the chair, shall we start?
Please, sir, let's move.
Sorry, sir, not the kind permission of the chair, with the kind permission of the honorable chief guest.
Wow, wow. I'm a guest only, thank you, let's start. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today's chief guest, Mr. M.A. Mannan MP, Honorable Minister, Ministry of Planning, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Our special guest, Mr. A.H.M. Hassan, Vice Chairman, Export Promotion Bureau. Distinguished discussants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good afternoon to all of you. I would like to welcome you all to the discussion session of Day 5 of the Trade and Investment Cooperation of Africa and Bangladesh towards a new trajectory. It's a part of the Bangladesh Trade and Investment Summit 2021, jointly organized by the Ministry of Commerce, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, and Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We are thankful to the chief guest and the special guests and all discussants for their kind presence. As you all know that on 26th of this month, the Honorable Prime Minister has inaugurated the Bangladesh Trade and Investment Summit 2021. She has much talked about export, product, and market diversification. This is something which she personally feels very strongly about, and she has been very vocal about it through her economic diplomacy with the whole world. As for the economy, you know that the economy of Bangladesh is growing very gradually and doing better than many regional peers. And Bangladesh is now considered to be one of the fastest growing and resilient economies of the world. And according to international development agencies, the economic growth rate remained positive and progressive, despite the pandemic effects, backed by local economic strength and growing international trade. Our export business is actually a critical game changer of our global economic relation. Ladies and gentlemen, Bangladesh heavily relies on the ready-made garments for export growth. And I think about 84% of our export, the RMG accounts for 84% of merchandise exports. And the economic relations of Bangladesh and Africa is led by trade, though it's not very remarkable by value. There are many issues, challenges holding back the potential economic cooperation, which needs to be addressed to create more and more opportunities in the years to come through our friendly diplomatic relations. In this connection, I would like to make a very, very brief presentation encompassing the economic relations issues and the likely way forward pertinent to the given topic to help your understanding on the subject matter and join to participate in the discussion. So without further ado, I would request all of you to have a look at the brief presentation. I hope it's visible for everybody. Okay, so as you know, the Bangladesh economy is much talked about globally. And all of you are pretty much aware of our situation on where we stand today, a $355 billion GDP, $2,227 per capita income, which is higher than all our regional neighbors. Inflation is stagnant. The contribution of industry, agriculture, and service to GDP has seen substantial rises. Our foreign reserve is at an all-time high, $48.06 billion, and also thanks to the remittance warriors who have been serving all across the world, all across the globe, especially in the Middle East and many other regions, and sending their remittances in. Employment status you have right here, as declared by the ILO and the World Bank. Our imports have gone up by nearly 20%, and our exports, as I mentioned, double-digit growth, 15% in the year 2020. Now, what's the sudden cause of success behind Bangladesh? Of course, LDC graduation is a very great news for us. 2026, we are poised to be graduating to a developing economy amidst various challenges. Multimodal connectivity, as you know, Bangladesh has been heavily investing in infrastructure, and Bangladesh wants to be the country who will be able to foster a connectivity between Asia, be the gateway from Asia to the rest of the world. And the Prime Minister herself in her inaugural speech mentioned that she wants Bangladesh to be a bridge between the East and the West. Economists have said that out of 66 emerging economies, Bangladesh has tended to be the 9th strongest economy. Our poverty reduction in the last 5 years has seen a substantial downfall of 4.1%. And Digital Bangladesh, which is a very successful story of Bangladesh. And today, because of Digital Bangladesh, Bangladesh Trade and Investment Summit, the largest virtual summit is happening. We have an internet penetration of more than 67% and nearly almost 124 million people are subscribing to the internet. 97% of the electricity is covered and stable credit rating has been maintained for more than a decade today. As for economic relations of Bangladesh and Africa, bilateral trade is about 1.5 billion. And of course, Bangladesh, for a change, has a positive trade balance on their side. And African exports is dominated primarily by cotton, as we all know, a very textile-oriented export market we have. Hence, the cotton is 45% is coming in from Africa. Export trade accounts to 1.2% of our total exports, which is more than $38 billion just in garments alone. But our total accounts for Africa is 1.02%. And of course, the friendly diplomatic relations between Africa and African countries and Bangladesh. Bangladesh is currently, the Ministry of Commerce is working hard, relentlessly to sign FTAs and PTAs with South Africa, Morocco, Egypt, and Senegal. At the same time, African investment is declining in Bangladesh. This may be due to the COVID, or maybe there will be lack of cooperation, which we are going to talk about today. But Bangladesh investment in Africa is actually on the rise, and the African investment was recorded in Bangladesh for $306 million. As for the bilateral scenario, you can see our exports have gone down from 2018 to 2019, but it's gone back up in 2020 to 0.32 billion. And our imports have also seen a shortfall due to the pandemic in the year 2020. We actually have seen huge investments in textiles and energy and many other sectors from countries like Mauritius, who is a leading African investor in Bangladesh. However, second to all others is Sudan, and then we have a few other countries who have investments in Bangladesh. Now, the trade sectors between the two the region and Bangladesh is primarily the exports, as I mentioned, leading in textile and clothing, pharmaceutical products, paper, yarn, woven fabrics, fruits, footwear, and sugar and confectionery items, while we are obviously leading the import market from Africa to Bangladesh, primarily on cotton, fertilizer, fruits, nuts, vegetables, mineral oils, sulfur, stone, and of course, electronic equipments. Major investment sectors, as I mentioned earlier, you saw investment from Mauritius and other countries coming in. It's primarily in textile, agriculture, fisheries, power, and telecommunication. Now, the challenges. We have many landlocked countries in Africa, which we are all aware of, and increases transportation costs for both regional and international trade in Africa. Absence of many missions of many African countries in Bangladesh affect the economic communication, and a limited foreign exchange supply and payment systems in many African countries of Africa constrain trade with African countries. And the lack of bilateral and multilateral agreements like FTAs and PTAs between Bangladesh and African countries hinders trade and investment relations. However, as I mentioned, the Ministry of Commerce is already working on it, and we expect to see some results very soon. As for the way forward, we don't have any direct flights to the African region. That can be a start, and of course, it can be introduced with specifically the countries which we have strong trade relations with. Frequent exchange of business delegations and regional trade fairs is something that can be identified to utilize potentials of new businesses between the two regions. As for FTAs, we can think about the Continental Free Trade of Africa, and of course, COMESA for strategic and mutual trade benefits. And Bangladesh may invest in manufacturing and agriculture to some African countries to meet their domestic needs. At the same time, the Africans can invest in Bangladesh and enjoy the low-cost production and export back to Africa. As for opportunities, the support for export integration and entrepreneurship development project which can be formed to increase trade between the region and Bangladesh. Bangladeshi investors can invest in the AGOA, which is the African Growth and Opportunity Act, and can expand the export to the US market for strategic market sustenance. And of course, post-graduation challenges will be an attractive way to move on to consider AGOA. Joint venture can be held in pharmaceuticals, RMG, real estate, construction, footwear, and many other sectors we have mentioned here already. And the demand for low-cost products is high, in Africa, and around 4 million Bangladeshis can be employed in different sectors, and primarily in the agro sector, and especially in agriculture in different countries for contract farming of agro products to meet their need, which Bangladesh is already doing in the Middle Eastern region. However, we would like to see that happen in the African region. That brings me to the end of my presentation. And at this very outset, for the information of the Honorable Chief Guest, we have some designated speakers with us today. And at the very beginning, I am going to invite, we have with us today Mr. Muhammad Zahangir Alam. He's a director of Square Pharmaceuticals Limited. And Square Pharmaceuticals has sizable exports in the African market. And due to consistent market growth, Square is actually going to launch a production facility in Kenya for higher reach out in the East African countries like Burundi, Ethiopia, and many others. Not only we would like to hear the experience of the trade scope and the new investment and export in the African markets, but also how we can strengthen our bilateral relations from not only from the pharmaceutical side, but as a whole as well. And any policy recommendations if you have. Mr. Muhammad Zahangir Alam, over to you.
Honorable Minister, and all dignitaries and all audiences, Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. At the outset of my discussion, I congratulate Minister of Commerce and Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industries for taking this kind of initiatives. And I'm thankful my late chairman who has been established this Square Group and who has been contributed in the transformation of the industrialization of Bangladesh, and at the same time in the pharmaceutical sector, the transformation doer. And before going into the details, and I have segmented my discussion into two ways. One is the trade perspective, and there is investment perspective. You know, Square Group mainly combination of there's the segments. The key is pharmaceutical sector that contributes 35% of our turnover, and it supplies almost 20% of our national medicine supply. And having leadership from 1985 to till today, we are leading this industry in Bangladesh. And at the same time, we are able to export almost 40 nations of these, almost all the continents, dominantly in Africa. Almost 10 countries we used to export in Africa, and nowadays, if you consider it in a monetary value, it would be about $10 million export year. And our main export is mainly based in sub-Saharan Africa, mainly East African communities and some MENA countries. And out of these East African communities, mainly Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi is the main key players, and it's also the same member of COMESA also. And out of this export, our experience is very positive, and Africa is very welcoming. And from pharmaceutical sector point of view, as a whole, Africa accounts for almost 16% of the global human count, and they used to carry almost 35% of the global disease burden, and they heavily depend on the imported medicine, almost 75–80%, and they used to provide only 3% of the global medicine supply. It is from the demand side. And another is that the infrastructure of Africa is sometimes very difficult. The regulatory frameworks sometimes is very slow to incorporate any product over there. And you already mentioned the difficulties of there's no direct flight, no bilateral free trade agreements, and there is some supply of the foreign currencies even. And I think that Africa is a combination of the so many languages, Anglophone, Francophone, Lussophone, Arabphone. So their legal infrastructure is so many varieties. And another thing is that African countries is a combination of the very small countries, even very like Swaziland, Rwanda, Burundi is a very small country even. It should be through by the Dubai or Mombasa port or even South Africa or even so many other ports. It takes too many transits. So from that perspective, it's an infrastructure limitation side. but over last 10 years, we experienced very positive growth, and still we are growing. And we are able to transform this industry in Bangladesh as an industry country from early 80s to till today. So this experience we are sharing to the sub-Saharan Africa. From this experience, we are planning to invest in a facility creation in sub-Saharan Africa. And I must be very thankful to the Honorable Prime Minister and Finance Minister and the Ministry and the Governor, sir, and all the dignitaries from the Bangladesh Bank. They're very kind enough and very facilitating to us to allow us to invest in outside Bangladesh. And it is for the first time a facility creation from pharmaceuticals point of view in Nairobi, and it's very welcoming over there, very welcoming, and it is about to launch. And it is in a need visit, and they allowed us so many infrastructure facilities as and when it is needed. So it's very welcoming. The challenge is that very shortage of the professionals, of pharmaceuticals professionals, and supply of the infrastructure from the point of view of the supply chain. And it's Africa, and there's no that kind of industry still. So we are sharing our experience in Bangladesh and our intimate relationships with suppliers and our wisdom from the last 50 years experience of the pharmaceuticals industry. We are sharing it. From this both way, the regular trade and the regular investment over there, I hope it will do huge transformation for Bangladesh pharmaceuticals industry and bilateral agreement. And I hope it will increase our confidence in overseas investment. And usually we are used to do trade, export perspective. Pharmaceuticals sector is a very sophisticated, and every nation is used to maintain its captive dependency, not from the outside dependency. Because of the COVID, we experience so many nations put sanction on the medicine export, and African nations experience it in COVID time. From that perspective, they are very welcoming, and from so it will be very positive, very positive for us. At the same time, and as an investor perspective, as a Bangladeshi perspective, it will be new window opening for us. It's very new window opening for us. So I hope from this experience in investment outside, mainly sub-Saharan Kenya, so many Bangladeshi enterprises will be going over there. You mentioned AGOA experience, AGOA opportunity for the R&D sector. It will be very nice and very new avenue for the investors from Bangladesh over there. So, in a nutshell, it is very small remark over there, and I must thankful to the central bank, and I hope they will be kind enough to facilitate us in many ways, and very a new dimension is coming over, I hope, from the investment from Bangladesh to the rest of the world. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad Jahangir Alam, for sharing your experience. It's wonderful to know that Africa is very welcoming with investments. At the same time, we would also like you to be our brand ambassador in Africa and tell them that likewise, we are also very welcoming when it comes to foreign investments coming into Bangladesh. So at the same time, we also look forward to having mutual bilateral interest. At this point of time, we have with us an investor from Africa. We have Dr. Kweku Akufo. He's the Managing Director of Kaman Investments, LLC. Dr. Akufo, you have more than 2 decades of experience in supply chain management. Bangladeshi investors have invested in some African countries, and collaboration in many IT sectors and the agro-process industry can happen due to a win-win situation. How do the supply chain of Bangladesh and Africa be improved for better trade and investment growth? And besides, how trade and business in Africa and Bangladesh can impact on bilateral economic relations? So I would request you to talk about the business and investment scopes between the African region and Bangladesh as a whole. Dr. Akufo, are you here?
Sir, he disconnected.
They're disconnected. Okay, so we will bring him back later. I just saw him a few minutes ago. Anyways, okay, let me just move on to our next speaker. We have with us Mr. M. Musaddiq Hussain, who is the Vice President of the Pharmacy Council of Bangladesh and also the Managing Director of UniHealth Pharmaceuticals Limited. Bangladesh has been exporting to 151 countries as a whole, and it meets 98%, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, 98% of the domestic demand as well. And in the recent years, the pharmaceutical exports to other countries has gradually increased, and I would like you to talk about the trade of pharmaceutical products in Africa, because like I mentioned, the Prime Minister talked about export diversification. We are primarily an RMG-oriented country, so pharmaceuticals is one of the most emerging sectors. So kindly address the potentials between these two regions.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum and a very good good afternoon to all. Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. M. A. Mannan MP, Minister for Planning, Government of Bangladesh, respected Mr. Rizwan Rahman, the President, Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and International Commerce and Industries, and distinguished guests from Bangladesh and Africa, ladies and gentlemen, please accept my heartiest greetings. I'm very honored and pleased to say a few words in this Bangladesh Trade and Investment Summit that is being organized jointly by the Government of Bangladesh and the GCCI. And today is focus in Africa, how we can expand our business. As already very important discussions has already started taking place, and we have already heard from the respected directors of Square, Mr. Mohammed Jangir, that about their investment in Kenya and how they have progressed very well in Africa. So before I make some more remarks, I would like to share, as well already informed by Mr. Rizwan Rahman, that in Bangladesh, the pharmaceutical industry has developed quite well, considerably for the last 40 years, I would say, that we have expanded our activities, especially after during the last 25 to 30 years, we have expanded our local manufacturing base with the policy support of the Government of Bangladesh. And now we have 98% of the $3 billion revenue that is being generated from pharmaceuticals being supplied by the locally manufactured pharmaceutical product. Only 2% are being imported. And this has created an enormous opportunity for Bangladesh pharmaceutical industry to develop their industry to an international scale. As you know, that many of the important aspects of the pharmaceutical industry is the regulatory approval from different authority, especially regulatory authority of the developed countries, especially USA, UK, MHRA, Europe, TGF from Australia. So all these countries' approval is very important in terms of the industry standards. So Bangladesh has already achieved those recognition, and top companies of Bangladesh, especially Square, Beximco, Inceptor, Healthcare, other companies has already developed facilities, SKNF and other companies has developed facilities to comply with those requirements. And with that background, and we can now produce almost all the different dosage forms of product. There are, we know that the latest are the biosimilar products in injectable forms. So we have also capability of producing all range of products in Bangladesh. So those are the strength of Bangladesh. In terms of regulatory strength, we have achieved that to the WHO standards and international standards. And we have a very strong community of qualified people here in Bangladesh, especially the pharmacy graduates and graduates from other disciplines, chemistry, microbiology, and other areas have already developed themselves to cater to the demands of the pharmaceutical industry. The success today of this industry is the contribution from the skilled manpower. Now, in terms of demography, already our respected president has already expressed about the strength of Bangladesh. So I will not go into the demography and other things. In terms of pharmaceutical industry, we have 150 plus industry operating in Bangladesh. The top 20 industries is already supplying 80% of the market demand. And now we have gone out to the other countries to export our very important branded generic pharmaceuticals from Bangladesh. And as a part of that, Africa naturally is a very important area where we can take our pharmaceuticals. But there are definitely some challenges. But if we look at the pharmaceutical export till now, we could not do much. Only say $170 million exported to more than 150 plus countries. The $170 million is not very big right now, but it has a potential to reach $1 billion over the next 3 to 4 years' time with the different activities being taken by the industry itself. We have now an API park being developed with the active support of the government, Ministry of Industries, and we are embarking on producing active pharmaceutical ingredients in the next couple of years, which we believe will improve our capability in terms of competitiveness. Because right now in the export market, one of the competition where we are facing is the generic pricing of generic products coming from, especially from India and other countries. So in Africa particularly, we are facing this competition. So right now in Africa, 10% of our export goes to Africa, say 16-17 million dollar last year. That has been the turnover. But we see, like as Square Pharmaceuticals being the #1 company, has already taken up a strategic decision of establishing a pharmaceutical plant in Kenya. There is another company trying to establish a pharmaceutical company in Rwanda. So some companies are also planning this. Because of the regulatory situation, it becomes better if we can produce our products in Africa and try to market there with our own force, of course, with the cooperation of people from Africa. We have to strengthen the people, skill of the people there to produce the product. And then once we do that, I think we will have a better edge than other competing countries. It is actually right now a $26 to $27 billion pharmaceutical market all over Africa, but we cannot go to, because the individual country has their own strategy in terms of regulatory and other things. Some of the developed countries like South Africa or Egypt, they are already embarking on pharmaceutical production already there. So we have to target those countries where the potential of our product is there. At the same time, we can help and build up a relationship with the regulatory authority. A cooperation between our regulatory authority and regulatory authority of Africa is important in creating the confidence between each other. Number one. Number two is that we can, the business people, we can form joint venture and we can involve them in creating an understanding that policy support is important in terms of developing the local industry. And once the local industry develops there, then the strength of the Bangladeshi company who can go there at the first move, like Square and other companies, will be important in achieving our share in the market. It will definitely, Africa is a very highly growing region, and in which even the healthcare systems is also developing quite well. And we believe that the market will grow by 10% plus over the next 5 to 10 years time. So we are talking of a, say, $50 billion market, say, in the next 10 to 12 years time. So in order to get a very good share of that market, we as a pharmaceutical company in Bangladesh can take up a strategic decision. And I think that Dhaka Chamber of Commerce could also play an important role in terms of facilitating this cooperation between some of the leading African companies in many of these countries. We have listed out a number of countries. Kenya definitely is one of those. Nigeria is also a highly population country with high population. But there are important countries, like we have been approached from Libya. We have seen some development in Somalia. So all these countries require pharmaceutical products. How we can go there, build up their capacity, at the same time create a confidence, because Bangladeshi products are well regarded in Africa as very quality products. That is the important thing that we have already achieved. The presence of our leading companies in Africa has already established that Bangladeshi pharmaceutical products has high quality. So quality aspects, cooperation from our regulatory authority as well as the regulatory authorities Africa is important, because in Africa what has happened, it could be different to different people in terms of information, but the regulatory authority somehow has been strengthened in Africa in terms of looking at it. So they are more dependent on importing pharmaceutical products from very large multinational companies. That way, their regulatory authority is a little bit biased on the multinational companies because they think that those are the standards and the quality. So we have to educate that as branded generic product manufacturer, we can also reach to that level of quality. quality of a product is dependent on the source of the materials, the processing, and demonstrating through bioequivalence studies and others about the these products. And we being a LDC countries, we are graduating to a developing country soon, but we have already created as an LDC the main important base for pharmaceutical manufacturing and understanding and knowledge. So, and also selecting and developing good products. So if we can demonstrate to countries in Africa about this, I think we'll have an important age in terms of developing our business. So I will not take more time from this August gathering. I believe that our presence of our Honorable Planning Minister will encourage us to develop a good plan. Pharmaceutical is already a success because of the government support here. This communication between Africa and Bangladesh, we can build up that understanding how the government has supported the pharmaceutical industry locally and how the government of African countries can support their local pharmaceutical industries. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity. I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to the organizer for giving me an opportunity to say a few words in this August gathering. We look forward to a very bright future for pharmaceuticals in Africa, and overall trade between Africa and Bangladesh should improve to a more bigger scale. That is our belief and our wish. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Musaddiq Hussain. Just for your information, the Bangladesh Trade and Investment Summit has 552 companies participating from 38 different countries. All the African nations, as you said rightly, and Mr. Mohammad Zahangir Alam also mentioned, majority of the African companies are primarily interested in pharmaceuticals. And then after that, they are interested in agro-processing, which means this summit was instrumental to highlight what are the, ideally when we do a summit, we bring in 5, 10, 15 sectors. What happens is after the summit, we can identify the core sectors from each of these regions. So we saw there's a lot of interest from pharma and agro. And the next time we try to engage with Africa, we have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here today. We will try to engage specifically on pharmaceuticals, specifically on agriculture, contract farming, and many others. Our Honorable Foreign Minister himself said we should move in focusing on contract farming in African region. This is only just a month ago or so. And when he has been recently on his tour in South Sudan and many other African nations. So at this point of time, because our African guest still hasn't got back online, I will quickly bring in the Director General of the Africa Wing, Mr. Muhammad Tariqul Islam is here with us from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I would humbly request him to share the roles and activities of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Bangladesh missions abroad to explore the African market. And the government is, of course, prioritizing on the economic diplomacy for trade and investment growth. So if you could shed some light on that, Mr. Tariqul Islam. Floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Minister, Ministry of Planning, Vice Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Export Promotion Bureau, President of Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the distinguished organizers, distinguished participants, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is really a privilege and honor to me to join discussions on trade and investment cooperation of Africa with Bangladesh. Africa is a rising continent. Africa is a continent with enormous potentials of economic growth. The continent is vastly endowed with human and natural resources. In spite of the effect of COVID pandemic, the economy of the countries of Africa is recovering rather rapidly. It is projected by the economic experts that there would be substantial economic growth in the African countries in the coming years. Bangladesh attaches great importance to promoting its relations with African countries. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has focused on promotion of economic diplomacy in the African countries, among other regions of the world. There exist enormous potentials of enhancing investment, trade, and commerce of Bangladesh with the African countries. As many African countries import huge amount of goods and services from outside the continent, there exist huge potentials of export of our manufactured goods to the African countries, among other products. It is noted that there has been steady growth of mutual trade with the African countries of Bangladesh, especially with the northern, eastern, western, and southern African regions. Bangladesh has mutual trade with Algeria, Egypt, and Morocco. Bangladesh has also bilateral trade with Gabon, Mali, Mauritania, and Cameroon in the Western African region. Bangladesh has considerable bilateral trade with Nigeria. In the Southern African region, Bangladesh has considerable bilateral trade with South Africa that is gradually increasing. Bangladesh has also bilateral trade with Mauritius and Seychelles. Bangladesh exports various products to Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda, and imports various goods from the countries. Looking at the list of potential export items, it is noted that the level of export from Bangladesh to the African countries could be enhanced manifold. There exist enormous potentials. As we note the growing trend of private consumption in Africa, Bangladesh is in a position to export a large amount of goods and manufactured products to the African markets. May I now mention the major export items of Bangladesh to the African countries. Bangladesh export a considerable amount of goods to the African countries, especially to the southern, eastern, and northern African countries. Bangladesh exports RMG, textile, pharmaceuticals, jute, leather products, plastic goods, electronic equipments, footwear, machine parts, light engineering products, agriculture, leather, construction materials, food items, etc. to the African countries. Bangladesh also import various goods from the African countries. Bangladesh mainly imports petroleum, fertilizer, food waste, iron and steel, fruits, nuts, chemical, raw materials, machinery item, wood, pigments, wastes, etc. from the African countries. Bangladesh has a lot of potentials to export further goods to Bangladesh, to the African countries, like pharmaceutical items, plastic, machinery and light engineering items, home appliances, medical goods, leather products, paper, mechanical and electrical appliances, furniture, light vessels, plastic goods, apparels, cement, medicines, food items, ceramic, jute, etc. products. Speaking about the investment from African countries to Bangladesh, it is noted that there have not been much investment from the African countries to Bangladesh. Many African countries have restrictive policies for outbound investments. From Mauritius, we have a considerable amount of invest in textile sector in Bangladesh. One Mauritius company, the Mauritian company, the Textile, they have invested in Bangladesh in textile sector. Apart from that, there have been investments from countries like South Africa, Algeria, and Egypt in agriculture, apparels, and trading sectors. Taking into account the lucrative incentives and facilities that are provided in our economic zones and high-tech parks, the investors from African countries may find it immensely rewarding to invest in various sectors in Bangladesh. I may mention a few potential sectors of investment from African countries to Bangladesh. They would be like textiles, RMG, leather, paper or pulp paper, ICT, electronic equipment, shipbuilding and shipbreaking, oil industries. For the African investors to tie up with Bangladesh investors, there may be joint venture industries in RMG, jute, pharmaceuticals, leather, food, agro-processing, plastic, and chemical products, among other sectors. There has been some investment from Bangladesh to African countries, as our previous speakers also discussed upon that. Bangladesh entrepreneurs have invested in pharmaceutical sectors in Kenya, BSRM is also going to set up their plant in Kenya. Apart from that, there are few other companies who have plans to invest in Africa. Speaking about the role of the foreign ministry, we could say that our missions in Africa are vigorously working for establishing cooperation among the national and local chambers of the countries of Africa with Bangladesh chambers. The Algerian Chamber of Commerce, the Nigerian Association of Chamber of Commerce, Lagos Chamber of Commerce, Abuja Chamber of Commerce, Kaduna Chamber of Commerce, Mauritius Chamber of Commerce, Seychelles Chamber of Commerce, South African Chamber of Commerce, Business Unity of South Africa, Black Business Council of South Africa are few to name, with whom our missions are maintaining regular contacts. The Federation of Bangladesh Chamber and Commerce Chamber and Commerce and Industries is going to conclude agreements with some of the chambers, as I have just mentioned. In order to promote our trade and business with Africa, our missions in Africa are also regularly joining meetings with the trade and industry officials. Virtual and in-person programs are also being organized with the ministries, chambers, business council, and business entities of the African countries. It may be mentioned that there exists a growing interest among the African business persons to do business with Bangladesh. The Bangladesh government has taken particular initiative for easing the visa process with the African countries. And agreement is being discussed in this regard with various countries like Algeria, Egypt, South Africa, Botswana, Rwanda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Nigeria. Our missions are also organizing in-person and virtual seminar on promotion of trade and investment. Bangladesh Day and Bangladesh trade fairs are also organized by the missions. Bangladesh business delegations and Bangladesh missions are also participating at the various trade fairs organized in African countries. With a view to promoting our trade and economic relations with Africa, the Foreign Ministry has highlighted the importance of high-level political and official visits, as well as exchange of visits of business delegates between Bangladesh and African countries. It may be mentioned that the Honorable Foreign Minister has paid an official visit to South Africa and South Sudan recently. During his visit to South Sudan, both sides agreed to enhance trade and economic cooperation, as well as cooperation in contract farming areas.
Right.
During his visit to South Africa, the Honorable Foreign Minister proposed for South African investment in our economic zones and high-tech parks. He suggested that there could be joint ventures in IT and agro-processing sectors, among others, with South Africa. In order to facilitate trade and business with African countries, the Bangladesh government has also taken initiatives for conclusion of agreements with the African countries in relevant areas of trade and economic cooperation, such as in areas of trade development, promotion and protection of investment, avoidance of double taxation, air services, cooperation between investment authorities, and maritime connectivity areas. Excellencies and distinguished guests, the Foreign Ministry has been working for strengthening our missions in the African countries in terms of increasing the number of officials, including diplomats, with a view to expanding our diplomatic and economic relations with the African countries. In the recent past, new embassies have been opened in Northern and Eastern Africa. In Ethiopia and in Sudan, we have opened our new missions. There are also plans for opening new embassies in few countries of Western and Southern Africa, like in Sierra Leone, in in Senegal,
Request you to make it short.
in Mozambique.
I would request you to wrap up in the next 1 minute, please, sir.
Yes, yes, I'm just finishing. Excellencies and distinguished guests, despite the detrimental impact of COVID pandemic, the African countries have all signs to recover from the current slowdown and have robust economic growth from now onward. Bangladesh government is eager to utilize the existing economic complementarities that exist between Bangladesh and African countries. And we look forward to enhancing the trade and economic relations with the Bangladesh government, with the African countries, to the mutual benefits of the peoples of Bangladesh and the African countries. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Do we have Mr. M.A. Moment with us? I can see his connection is stuck. Sir, can you hear us? Is it still online? Can you check IT? I just got it.
Disconnected.
Okay. Okay, if he comes back on, we will try to accommodate him because I have a request from the Honorable Chief Guest Office. He has a national emergency. He has a national duty to attend to a very important meeting. So I would like to wrap it up as soon as possible. So we don't have Mr. Khairul Majid. Okay. At this point of time, we have our special guest today, Mr. A.H.M. Hassan. Sorry, I would like to, sorry if you allow the chief guest and the special guest, I would like to bring in one of my co-hosts from the Ministry of Commerce. We have the Joint Secretary here with us today, Mr. Abdul Samad Al-Azad from the Ministry of Commerce. I would like him to make his remarks on behalf of the organizing team. Azad bhai, can you unmute yourself, please? Yes.
Yes.
Glory, please unmute.
How are
Azad,
you?
you're muted. Can you please unmute?
Thank you. Thank you, Rizwan bhai. I was not a designated speaker, but it's a privilege to speak before the Honorable Minister since I worked with him very cordially. He was very cordial to me during my days in the IRD, in the Ministry of Finance. So I posed a question that the economic landscape and trade and investment landscape is being changed in Africa because of the regional trade agreements that are in place. So we conducted a lot of studies with regards to Africa for going for free trade agreement and comprehensive economic partnership agreement. But because of these regional agreements, it's being hampered because there are provisions that a particular country will not be able to go for a deal with another bilateral relationship with another country. With this perspective in mind, we need to go forward. And I was very eager to know from some of you, especially from our friend in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to have some perspective. She has already mentioned about Mauritius. But apart from Mauritius, I was eager to know. So what's going to have in place with the regional free trade agreements in place? And there are two more things about the inward and outward investment, because we have a lot of prospects in Africa in terms of outward investment. So he has touched upon it that it's restricted. So with these agreements in place, what is going to develop in the trade and investment scenario in Africa? We'd like to know, or later we may discuss in the sideline. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Rizwan bhai, for giving me the chance. Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Azad bhai. Thank you for your kind remarks. We obviously are going to jointly, the Ministry of Commerce and Dhaka Chamber will prepare an outcome report. And of course, we take the comments from all the speakers. And in fact, we send it back to them for their views in case we have missed out any points. I'll take one last speaker before I move on to our special guest and the chief guest today. I have here with my colleague here, Mr. Khairul Majid Mahmood, can you please unmute? I will give you 2 minutes to make your remarks. Yes, the floor is yours. No, we can't hear you. Is it me or I'm not? You're not audible. Can you take out the headphones and just speak directly? Can disconnect the headphones from the device? No, you're not audible.
Please disconnect it.
Hello,
Yes. Now we can hear you. Please
can
proceed.
you hear me?
Please.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Mannan, our very successful planning minister, special guest, Mr. President, foreign dignitaries, Vice Chairman EPB, and distinguished guests. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. As far as Africa is concerned, I think our foreign minister visited earlier, and South Africa has offered us, Bangladeshi business people for investment in their infrastructure, in their country, in the textile sector, footwear sector, clothing sector, and all these sectors. And Bangladesh can also, investors consider purchasing land also in real estate and other things. Even they have offered joint ventures. While we are striving for FDI in our country as well, foreign direct investment, and simultaneously, I think some of our pharmaceutical companies also setting up factories in Kenya and Rwanda and other countries. And we look forward to more investment and trade deficit with Africa. And I think with this government, open policy and aggressive policy and friendly policy and economic diplomacy of the foreign ministry, we are more or less ahead in this sector. And I hope, I'm not going to say much word as you have given me 2 minutes, I had a lot to say. And we're eagerly looking forward to listen to our planning minister. But I think we can develop, and there are a lot of opportunities as well as from our part, our business people, as well as the African business people. And investment side, I think we have a lot of investors over here. We can look forward to go there as well. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Khairul Majid, my colleague from the board of Dhaka Chamber. At this point of time, we will close the floor, and I'm thankful to the special guest and the chief guest, despite their busy schedule, they have joined us today. Now, although Bangladesh's export is dominated by the RMG sector, there are opportunities in other sectors: jute, leather, light engineering, agro-processed products, within service sectors. However, to diversify the export and scale the value chain, African market can actually play a vital role. In this regard, we would like to hear the valued remarks of the Honorable Vice Chairman of the Honorable Vice Chairman and CEO of the Export Promotion Bureau, Mr. A.H.M. Hassan, our special guest today. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. M.A. Mannan, Honorable Minister of Planning of Bangladesh, dear President of DCCI, Mr. Rizwan Rahman, distinguished speakers, distinguished delegates from home and abroad, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon. At the outset, I would like to congratulate Ministry of Commerce and DCCI for organizing this summit and inviting me for today's seminar. This is an honor and privilege for me to be present here at this important webinar. I thank you all for joining from several corners of the world. I shall try to avoid repetition because I'm speaking most probably I am the 5th or 6th person, and finish as quickly as possible as we are eagerly waiting to listen from our Honorable Minister, the Chief Guest. But before discussing the main issue, let me briefly reiterate some of the major aspects of present economic situation of Bangladesh. What we have seen over the last decade, Bangladesh has been successful in accelerating the domestic demand as well as ensuring export growth. Moreover, government is pursuing inclusive growth path to substantially reduce poverty rate. The economy maintained GDP growth rate at above 6% in last 10 years, resulting increased per capita income, which is $2,227 now. This has already been said by our respected president of DCCI. And we also know that Bangladesh is moving out of the group of LDC in 2026. And Bangladesh has also recovered reasonably well from the shock of pandemic with the prudent stimulus package under the visionary leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable Chief Guest, now I would like to focus on Bangladesh's trade with the countries of African continent. Here what I want to mention 2-3 statistics. First, the total trade of African continent with the world is $888 billion only, which is roughly 3% of the 3% of total trade. So as a destination of goods, Africa yet to reach a very high point. Again, the intra-African trade at the same period, I mean the last year, was $133 billion, which is around 15%. Now here you see the connection what our Joint Secretary from the Ministry, Mr. Azad, was speaking about. This intra-trade, African trade, or the African trade is heavily influenced by AGOA and COMESA, the two basic agreements. And this agreement, for these two agreements, the trade among the African nations have increased over the last decade. And looking at the Bangladesh's figure, Bangladesh's total trade, I mean the import plus export, is around $1.1 billion in 2020, which is 1% of our Bangladesh's total trade. That means this is significantly low compared to trade with other regions. I mean, in terms of Asia or European Union or North America, sorry. You may be aware that Export Promotion Bureau is the principal authority of Bangladesh for promoting export and extending support for formulation of export-related policies. Our data shows, which has already been explained, that in Africa, our export destination is basically to 5 to 6 countries, and we also export very handful of products. But I'd like to mention that goods export of Bangladesh to the African countries is about 1% of total export only. As part of Export Promotion Initiative, EPB has decided to participate around 5 trade fairs in the Africa in coming years, not coming years, in this fiscal year, and exchange delegation. This in good case, Europe continued to be the main trading partner of Bangladesh, mainly due to the preferential market access under the EBA scheme, which we already are aware of. But in recent years, trade between Asia and Africa is on the rise. Investment of Asian countries, especially China, India, Malaysia, South Korea, Singapore, and Japan in the African region has made significant impact on their trade with the African countries. But this investment trade relationship with the African nations is not present in case of Bangladesh. The current trade with African countries is based on the competitive price of some products, such as textile, jute, apparels, pharmaceuticals, and few others. But the opportunity to have substantial increase is limited due to the higher import tariff of the countries of African nations on the products. However, I firmly believe there is high potentiality of products such as pharmaceuticals, plastic items, jute and jute goods, agro-processed, and some other items. There are some country-specific challenges for some potential products, which could be resolved through bilateral engagements and talks. So we need support from our colleagues of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. According to the latest regional economic analysis of the World Bank, African economy is going to have a fallout, and its economy is projected to shrink around 3%, 3.3%, pushing this region into recession. But African governments have started putting in place policies and programs to support an inclusive and substantial post-pandemic recovery. This will create demand for food, healthcare, education, and other services. Africa may source these products and services from emerging economies of Asia, like Bangladesh, at a competitive price. Hence, it is high time to engage more with the African countries to create a win-win condition. In service sector, healthcare and education may have important role. Ladies and gentlemen, it is apprehended that export of Bangladesh to EU and UK would decline due to loss of preferential market access after the graduation from LDC in 2026. Bangladesh may try to offset this loss by creating African market. Though there are lots of opportunities in Africa, our business people needs to take into account the economic patterns of the respective African countries to secure business. Given the fact that African trade is developed countries are largely dominated by free or preferential trade agreements covering trade in goods and services and investment, Bangladesh and countries of African region need to engage in FTAs. People-to-people contact also needs to be enhanced to build trust and create partnership. Bangladesh government is working on liberalizing investment policy and allow investment abroad. I hope this will create scope for our business people to be a part of the world's value chain, as well as market diversification in the African region. Finally, I fervently hope that our combined effort and contribution would make it possible to identify appropriate tools and strategy for enhancing trade and investment between Bangladesh and countries of African region. With these few words, I would like to conclude. Once again, thank you all for attending this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Vice Chairman of Export Promotion Bureau, for your kind remarks, value suggestions, which we will definitely, as I mentioned, Dhaka Chamber has the privilege to work in tandem with the Ministry of Commerce and as well as other government organizations, including your own organization, and we look forward to continued support and cooperation. At this point of time, we bring the session to my personal favorite session, where we invite our honorable chief guest. Before I invite him, when I was coordinating with so many countries across the world, in fact, 38 countries, different sessions, we were bringing in different ministers. And I'll be very frank with you, and I'll be very open in front of today's chief guest. He always gives the private sector the strength to speak out. And everyone was asking, why Ministry of Planning related to Africa? I said there is absolutely no relation. We wanted, because we found that our bilateral relations with Africa is the most challenging. It is minimal. It is an untapped market of golden opportunities, but we are sitting on our desk and not being able to act on it. So we thought, whenever we invited chief guests, we seek their guidance, primarily their guidance, and then we move forward with their recommendations. So we thought only a seasoned bureaucrat, a seasoned politician, a seasoned state minister in the Ministry of Finance, and a seasoned cabinet member, all in one together, I could only find one person. So hence, ladies and gentlemen, at this point of time, let me bring in our chief guest, our planning minister, Honorable Mr. M.A. Mannan MP, whose overall views on the economic relations of Africa and Bangladesh. And of course, we look forward to his valued guidance, because he has listened to each and every speaker today. And thereon, the Ministry of Commerce and the Dhaka Chamber will prepare our outcome reports according to his recommendations. Honorable Minister, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Really, it's very humbling what you have just said. I myself was a bit, why I am here. And you've been very frank, and I will also frank with you. There's no direct connection, of course, but being in the government, I have a side role here also to play. And in that, in improving the ground or leveling the ground between in the government where you can play smoother and better, I can do my bit. So from that perspective, I think my joining this morning will be useful for me. Besides Rizwan, the bright young chamber chief of Dhaka, and your cohorts in the trade and industry now in Bangladesh, they're all very attractive people, and I'm being fairly, I'm not using the word old, which is a cliche, senior. Being fairly senior in terms of age, I enjoy meeting people like you. Thank you very much. And of course, there are other distinguished guests too. I have Mr. Hassan, who is our Vice Chairman of the Export Promotion Bureau, who is a senior officer from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, two very important players from the private sector, Square and another one is another very large
Unimed.
Unimed. Okay, Unimed. So them and others, it's very attractive to be around and to be speaking to them. Thank you. You see, trade with Africa. I think I'm not trying to teach you something we have to keep in mind. All trades with countries of Africa and Asia and some other countries nowadays is based on our immediate past colonial relationship, mostly, not all, large part of it. Even in our own region, in Southeast Asia, we grew up drinking Horlicks for no good reason except that it came from England, as far as I could understand. So the trade and industries and flow and power of trade between these countries of the South and countries of the North was primarily based on colonial relationship. It still remains in a way. I remember the huge big organization in Geneva. It is called South-South Center, South-South Cooperation. Late President Julius Nyerere and his cohorts at that time, including Kwame Nkrumah, Sukarno, they all stood up and wanted to do something about it. And they said, look, this North-South thing must be stopped. Let's have South-South cooperation so that we should be trading among ourselves. But unfortunately, because of very highly potent political dimensions built into it, it didn't function as it should have. So this Bangladesh, Africa is a part of that South-South pattern. It comes to my mind. South-South cooperation did not take up very well for so many very real reasons. But that should not dissuade us from looking for markets. We have to go out. We have to break the line. We have to jump, grab, and get. That is the rule of the market. So in that light, there's a huge, big opportunity for us in our brotherly, equally oppressed and colonized huge continent of Africa, knowing that and having our and respecting them for their, and then also being with them for their past miseries during colonial era, recognizing that and standing by them, there's a good chance for trade between them and us. In fact, during some recent visits to some of these African countries, in Kenya, you are mentioning Ethiopia, and I went to Cote d'Ivoire and Congo also, I think. I was surprised to see some little Bangladeshi products in some shops, particularly in the East African zone. Biscuits and chanachurs and the small things were being sold in some shops. Addis also had, when I went there 3 years back for some UN conference, there were some talks about some Bangladeshi companies going and opening up some kind of garments or something there in that country. Then we hear about South Africa, huge big prospects. We hear about Rwanda, the lands available. Our foreign minister has been to South Sudan, of all places in the world, where he has offered lots of lands, and he spoke about it. So the point is, there are prospects. We have to cultivate it. We have to grab it. We have to be aggressive about it. And that our private sector, Rizwan Rahman and others, I'm sure all of you people, pharmaceuticals have broken the ground already. I do really feel proud when I see our pharmaceuticals moving into European markets, in the North American markets. There's a huge, big success. Following the success of the pharmaceuticals, Next big thing is food processing, packaged food or processed food, whatever you want to call it. Agribusiness, as they say. Huge prospects exist here. I'm not a cognoscenti, as they say, in these matters, but I could feel that there are areas where we can do business with the Africans. There are areas which is still probably we can't reach at the upper levels of the economy. I can't even name those because I don't know much about it, but technologically very high. It is superb technology. There probably we don't have much. We can't do much at this stage. Although we must say that we do feel that our ICT and our digital people are very smart and doing a lot of good business. I saw in the newspaper yesterday, a large amount of money was earned last year from our export of our digital services. In the Daily Star or Baltimore, I don't know. I read the news on that. So there are a lot of prospects. It seems now we have to go and get it. And going and getting, of course, will have to be done by our private sector, because that what is the rule of the day in Bangladesh and elsewhere too. In Bangladesh, our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina very consciously, to her advantage, to the advantage of the country, to the advantage of the economy, has given a lot of space to our private sector. Would like to give more space to the private sector, so that you can operate smoothly and without barriers. The roads remain open, and I'm sure our private sector has, meanwhile, some say about 80% of the commanding heights of the economy is controlled by the private sector. So we don't grudge it in the government. We encourage it. We would like that this go further. Our job is to facilitate Export Promotion Bureau, Ministry of Commerce, NBR, wherever there are glitches or wherever there are barriers, small or big, we need to move them so that you can fly smooth and you can fly fast. So in that light, these sort of discussions, which allows people to speak out their mind freely and frankly, and to point out the areas where more is required to be done by the government on a policy level, there is a lot of value in these sort of discussions. So Rizwan, your initiative in this regard, in this field is highly appreciated, at least by us, by me in the government. And whatever little I can do, although I have no direct role, as you said initially, and which I agree also, in an indirect way, of course, I will try to come into do my bit in seeing that our exporters, our traders, our manufacturers, our tradespeople, they all go out, fly around in the world, and carry our flag, carry our goods, and do business. If they could do it 300 years back by rowing their boats and arriving here, we can do it now with the jet planes at our command. So ground is much smoother here. You don't have to be affected by taxi fly and malaria and big things. They're much better now. The chaps those days from a little country called England, what they did, coming into places like Durgapur in Mymensingh, living under mosquito nets in a hurricane lamp. They did a lot. It's learning for us. Our people will find the ground much more comfortable and easier. So it's our turn now. Let's not miss that turn. Rizwan, thank you. You've been very kind and you have always been speaking in a very friendly tone with me. I appreciate that. I hope we continue our friendship in the coming days. And for all other guests, government and outside government, particularly Mr. Majid Mahmood, Humayun Bhai bhai to naki. Humayun Bhai bhai na amar Humayun Bhai bhai cho. Amar একটা prayer ছিল ঢাকা ক্লাবের membership কিন্তু এটা হয় না. You have probably lost your seat there already. So anyway, so thanks to every one of you. See you. Goodbye and good day. Joy Bangla, Joy. Oh, it's কোনো emergency ছিল না কিন্তু. There is another meeting out there at BCC. I have to go there. Thank you. No emergency. No, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for your kind words. I will also put into note the issue of you just mentioned regarding Mr. Khairul Majid Mahmood. We will also follow up on that. We will follow up on that and I will hold him responsible. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard the chief guest who was kind and gracious enough to give us his guidance. And I believe that we have highlighted from our experience in the B2Bs with Africa and Bangladesh that there's a strong demand for agriculture, agri-based products, contract farming, and most importantly, the pharmaceutical industry, whether it is in form of JVs, in form of importing from Bangladesh, or setting up plants in Bangladesh and then exporting back to the African nations. And I personally think that I think we should also create a project, our success story, Digital Bangladesh. Maybe we can actually invest there in a G2G format and create a Digital Africa, because two of our speakers from Africa couldn't join because of poor technology, in fact. So, of course, I think there is a sector we can consider that maybe we also invest in their IT sector and teach them that how Digital Bangladesh has transformed Bangladesh today. And I always keep saying that one of the main goals of holding this Trade and Investment Summit is primarily to highlight, of course, primarily to celebrate the bicentenary of the father of the nation and the glorious golden jubilee of the independence of Bangladesh. But also we wanted to highlight the success story of where Digital Bangladesh has brought Bangladesh today, for which 38 countries with 552 companies are connected globally. And we had thousands of people in the inauguration ceremony. Already 350 B2B meetings have already been organized. And this wouldn't have been possible without Bangladesh's readiness in the virtual economy. So thank you, Honorable Chief Guest, Honorable Minister, Honorable Vice Chairman EPB, our special guest, and all our respected discussants for your active participation. Thank you, audience. Even disturbing you on a weekend, you have shown your active participation. My fellow co-hosts and our colleagues in the Ministry of Commerce and DCCI, my colleagues in the board of Dhaka Chamber, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.